Hello, welcome to government class. We're looking at tips to UTME success in government. There are so many things I'll be sharing with you. First of all, you need to take note of topics that have repeated questions. One good thing with the UTME questions is that they repeat a lot of their questions. So as a student preparing for this exam, you should be able to know questions that come every year. There are over 10 to 15 questions in about 5 topics that repeat themselves. So take note of them, be able to answer them properly. So like example of what we have here, we have the basic concept of the government. When we look, basic concept of the government, we're looking at democracy, aristocracy, socialism, and you name it. Then the next is international organizations. Yes, they always bring questions from this topic. We have several of them, looking at ECOWAS, ECOMOG, United Nations, Commonwealth. You must take your time to study them. Know the origin of this organization. Know when they were formed, when they were founded, with their origin, their aims and objectives is very important. And also know their achievements and the problems associated with these organizations. So these are the things you need to take note of. Now, take note of definition of terms. Definition of terms. What is government is a definition of term. You should be able to define government. Government is a body of persons that make and enforce law for the society or states. You should be able to define these terms. You should be able to define legitimacy. You should be able to define sovereignty. You should be able to define communism, communalism, totalitarianism, feudalism, fascism, totalitarianism. Name them. You should be able to define them. Know the features of these terms. Apart from that, know their advantages and their disadvantages. If you are able to do this, you're good to go. Then another thing, we're looking at some of these terms. Sovereignty. Sovereignty. Sovereignty may be defined as the supreme power of a state to exercise full legal authority over its own borders. Nigeria is a sovereign state. Nigeria is a sovereign state. Ghana is a sovereign state. America is a sovereign state. Now, when we mention state here, we're not talking about the states in Nigeria. Please don't get me wrong. We're talking about state as a nation. State as a nation. So we're not saying Abia State, Ogun State. No. We're talking about state as a nation. Now, we're looking at sovereignty here. And okay, look at, we said is the affairs within its territory without any form of external control. Nigeria is a sovereign state because countries like America, Britain cannot just enter into our borders. No, they can, in as much as we are having all the security situation in Nigeria is within our borders, but we don't have an external influence. So because we are sovereign, before they can penetrate, they would have broken the bands, they would have broken the borders, shielding us as a people. So Nigeria is a sovereign state because she's free from external control. Since we gained our independence in 1960, we're a sovereign state. Let me also inform you, in 1960, about 17 African countries gained their independence. All these African countries are also what? Sovereign states. So Nigeria cannot just barge into Ghana without permission. No. If Buhari is coming, President Buhari wants to visit Ghana, the president of Ghana must be aware that Buhari is coming. Why? Because the president, our president, is a representative of Nigeria as a nation. And Nigeria is not just a nation, but a sovereign state. So please take note of this. Then this is what the French political philosopher talked about, Jim Bodin. He introduced the modern theory of sovereignty. He's the one that introduced it, made it explicit, made us to have a better understanding of what we're talking about. Now, let's look at another term, legitimacy. legitimacy. The word legitimacy is a Latin word from the word legitimus. Legitimus, which means lawful or according to law. Lawful or according to law. Now, everything we see around us, like the government of today, is legitimate because they were voted in by the people. So please take note of this. Now, we have the Nigerian police force, we have the army. These are legitimate organizations. Why are they legitimate? Because they are backed by the Constitution. Please, you need to take note of this. You'll be able to note this definition of terms. Why is this so? It also means acceptance of the political system by the people in compliance with the rules and regulations. What is the rules and regulations? The Constitution. The Constitution. These are the rules and regulations that gives them the power to what? Operate. Also, we're going to be studying constitutional developments in Nigeria. That is talking about the Clifford Constitution of 1923, the Richards Constitution of 1946, the several independent constitutions. We have the Independent Constitution of 1963 and all that. So these are the things we'll be looking at in this class. Okay, now let's go back to definition of terms. I told you earlier on, I said when we say state, we're not talking about a state in Nigeria. We're not talking about Ogun State, Abia State, or no, we're not talking about Lagos State. We're talking about a state as a nation, as a country, a state as a country. Now, what do we mean by, what does a state mean? It simply means a politically organized body of people occupying a definite geographical entity or territory. Let me stop here. Let me explain the first 4 lines. What do we mean by this? For a country to become a state, for any nation to say it is a state, 1, it must have a defined territory. We are in Nigeria. Nigeria is a defined territory. We are surrounded by our neighbors. Nigeria shares borders with 4 countries. We share borders with Niger Republic, we share borders with Chad and all that. So we have a definite, you must have a definite territory. It must be geographically located. So that is what we mean by a state. Then the other thing, he said it must have an organized government, which we do. It must have an organized government, free, get the word, free from external control, and has coercive power to secure obedience from its citizens and others. So what do we mean by this, free from external control? A state should be able to take decisions, make decisions on its own without any external interference. They shouldn't be seeking opinion from outside. So that is what we mean, free from external control. So when you see, they may ask you, a defined territory is what? You should be able to know that they are asking you, is it a state or is it a nation? Now, what are the characteristics of a state? Number 1, for a state to become one of the characteristics of a state, it must have population. You must have people living in a state. A state is not an empty entity. It does not exist in void. So it must have people living in it. That is one of the basic features of a state. There must be people, a number of people living with it. It shouldn't be too small. You shouldn't have a minimal. You shouldn't say, oh, 20 people should be here, 30 people. No. As much as possible. These are the things you need to take note of. Okay? Now, territory. It must have possessed a definite territory. It must have a place where it calls its home. That this place is where we live. This is our place. So that they don't have issues with other people in terms of boundary and all that. So it must have a definite territory for you to say it is a state. Then thirdly, it must have a government. A state must have a functional and effective government. What does the government? Let's go back to the definition of government. It says government is a body of persons that make and enforce law for the society or state. So now it must have a government to take charge of the affairs of that state. And the government should be able to perform its functions without any hindrance. What does the government do here? The government is acting on behalf of the citizens. It's making laws, making decisions, making policies on behalf of the citizens. Please take note of this. Okay? Now, we're going to define another term, democracy. Democracy. Government student, I know you know the popular definition of government, of democracy by Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president of America. We're not looking at that. No. Government of the people, for the people, by the people. Please, don't even go there. At your level, you shouldn't be defining democracy like that. You have outgrown that definition. So the first thing we need to know, it is a system of government based on popular consent. Based on popular consent. The electorate freely choose their government. That is to say, it is the government with the approval of the people. Government with the approval of the people. Government with the backing of the people. So please take note of this. Democracy is a fusion of two Greek words. Demos, remember, demos means what? People. And kratia, rules of government. Rules of government. And we trace its origin to ancient Greek states. Ancient Greek states. Because they permitted freedom of speech and all that. At that time, it was eligible male citizens that were allowed to participate in this thing. So take note of this. Now, let's go back to the government and what it maintains and the state. Look at, we're still going back to what? Sovereignty. We're still going back to what? Sovereignty. We're defining these terms so that you don't forget. When you see them in your exams, you don't need to think twice. You just know that these are the key things you need to take note of. So what is sovereignty? Like we said it has to be free from what? External influence. External influence. A state should be able to make decisions on its own without interference from outside. A state should be able to bear its losses and its gain. If a state makes a decision that goes contrary to what they wanted and it's to their disadvantage, they should be able to do what? Bear the loss. That is what makes it what? Sovereign. Sovereign. So please take note of this. Now, recognition. A state must be recognized nation worldwide. I hope you know that Nigeria is a member of over 50 international organizations. So Nigeria is not just recognized as Nigeria here. No. We have bilateral relations with other countries of the world. So a state must be recognized internally and externally. Other countries in the international arena must recognize its existence. These things are very, very important. It must recognize its existence for it to be a state. Now let's look at the features of democracy. What makes a state? What makes democracy important? Let's look at it. Implies periodic and fair election, free and periodic elections. These are the things you need to take note of. They elect political office holders. They must go through a periodic election that is free and what? Fair. Another features of democracy is the fundamental human rights. Fundamental human rights must be recognized and protected. The rights of citizens must be recognized and protected in a democratic state. Remember, Nigeria is a democratic state. Now, majority rule. What do we mean by majority rule? The people. The people. The will of the people must always prevail. The will of the people must always what? Prevail. There is also equality before the law. Equality before the law. Remember, no man is above the law. No man is above the law. So the law covers both the governed and the what? The ruled. So these are the things, the ruler. It covers the ruler and the ruled. Please take note of this. Take note of this. Now, let's look at another international organization. International organization. We have the African Union. The African Union. It used to be known as OAU. This topic is always repeating itself every year. They can ask you a question about the Commonwealth. They can say, which of this country is not a member of the Commonwealth? They can bring a question like that. You may see Nigeria, you may see Ghana, you may see Mozambique, you may see America, and you may be confused. How can this country not be part of the Commonwealth? The answer here is Mozambique. Mozambique is not a member of the Commonwealth. Like this, like if you see a question like this, the African Union has the following countries as members. And you see Ghana, you see America, you see Nigeria, you see Togo. You shouldn't think twice to know that the answer is what? America. America is not part of the African Union. Now, look at the date. This is the new date of the new African Union. And it's dated Monday, 8th July 2002. So please take note of this. You should be able to know its origin, like I said earlier on. This is the origin. You should be able to know the origin. How many members does it have? Look at, it's also talked about the defunct OAU. So these are the things you need to know. You should also know who started it. Who are the originators of these organizations? Please, these are the things you should take note of. Please, next slide. Okay. Now we have Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi was the first person to propose that. And you can see, finally, that is what we have existing. And okay, now we talked about, it held between the 9th to 13th. It was a conference between the 9th to 13th of July 2001 before they did what? Established the African Union. Before they established the African Union. And they said the summit was held in Lomé, Togo. And so this was how the African Union was brought into existence. Remember, it is only African countries that are members of that organization. And we have over 50 countries in Africa. Okay, now the origin of the Commonwealth. The origin of the Commonwealth. Now, you may be wondering, which organization is the Commonwealth? Don't think too far. The Commonwealth are countries that were colonized by the British. Countries that were colonized by the British. Countries that were colonized by the British. There are over 50 member nations that make up the Commonwealth. Over 50 member nations that make up the Commonwealth. So we have countries like Australia, Nigeria, Canada, South Africa, and so on. Remember, when I was explaining, I said Mozambique was not a member of the Commonwealth. Mozambique was not colonized by Britain. So please take note of this. If you see questions like, they are tricky questions. You may look, it may sound confusing. Please take note. Mozambique was colonized by Portugal. All right, we're going to call it, we're going to go for a break for now. Then later we'll resume. Thank you very much.